I was pouring coffee when someone pounded on the door. Not a polite knock 3 hard hits like a debt collector who already knows your name. The mug tapped the counter. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and looked at the door frame I painted last month. Dad's old brass key hung on its hook beside it, scratched and dull. It used to live in his pocket. Now it lives here like a small guard. I opened the door 2 inches. Mum's face filled the gap. Behind her, my sister round belly under a pink hoodie, breathless and smiling. Before I could say, "Hi, Mum," pushed. The door swung wide. They stepped past me the way people step off an elevator, as if the space already belongs to them. "Hello to you too," I said. My sister lifted her phone and started filming the entryway. "Babe has to see the light in here," she said to no one already walking toward the hallway. The camera slid over the coat hooks, the framed thrift store print. The plant I'm trying not to kill. Mum didn't look at me. She scanned the living room, chin tipping up and down, counting something in her head. She brushed her fingertips over my couch like she was checking fabric at a store. "Shoes off," I said, soft but clear. Mum slid one heel against the other and left both shoes on. My sister didn't hear me or pretended not to. She was already opening the guest room door, panning the lens like a realtor. "Hold on," I said. "What are you doing to her?" she said. "Just a quick one." I walked back to the shoe cabinet and pulled out the small notebook I keep there. The cover is bent. On the first page in Dad's blocky handwriting, it says, "Threshold log." It started as a joke, his way of tracking contractors and deliveries. I kept it after he died. Now I use it for anyone who crosses this line. Date, time, names, one feeling. I wrote Tuesday 8th, 11 a.m. Mom, sister trespass, dressed as family. Mum moved to the mantel, picking up a ceramic bowl Dad and I found at a yard sale. "This should go," she said. "Safety." She set it down in a new place without asking. "Please don't touch my things," I said. My voice sounded steady, like someone else's. Sister's laugh echoed from the hall. "Oh my God, Mommy, look at the closet space." She swung open doors, filmed shelves, opened the bathroom, let the fan whine. "Babe's gonna freak." I looked at Mum. "Why are you here to talk like adults?" she said, as if the word adults belonged to her. "Also, the driveway's too narrow for a crib delivery. We should mark out a better path." "There's no crib delivery," I said. She smiled in the way that isn't a smile. "We'll see." I felt the old heat rise in my throat, then drop. I set the log back in the drawer and touched the brass key on the wall. Cool, metal, familiar weight. I took a breath and moved to stand between Mom and the mantel. "This is my home," I said. "Ask before you enter. Ask before you touch. Start now." Her eyes flicked to my sister, then back to me. Out in the hall, my sister's voice got higher. "Happy, Mommy, it's perfect." I watched Mum hear that word perfect and settle into herself like she'd just confirmed a plan. She lifted a hand and snapped her fingers twice. "Water," she said. I didn't move. The coffee on the counter had cooled. The front door was still open behind them, and a thin stripe of morning air pressed across the floor like a line of chalk. I thought, this is at the moment I start keeping what Dad left me. Then I said, "No." The word left my mouth and hung there. Mum's eyes narrowed. My sister's voice carried down the hall, bright and careless drawers, sliding hinges, whining. I touched the brass key again, and the house shifted in my head. The morning air, the coffee, even Mum's breathy sigh, everything slid back. I was in Dad's workshop, tin roof ticking in the sun, a box fan pushing hot air in a slow circle, radio talk and sawdust. Dad's hands were a map of small scars. He pressed a board to the table saw and said, "Measure twice, cut once." Same for promises. He handed me the tape measure. Read it to me. I did. We cut. He showed me how to sand the edge so it wouldn't bite. People think a house is wooden pipes, he said, rubbing the grain. A house is the place you come back to. You don't auction that off just because someone snaps their fingers. He kept everything labelled receipts in manila folders, dates in Sharpie on filters, photos of serial numbers taped inside a cabinet. On the pegboard, he'd written, rules. Write it down, keep copies, take pictures. He smiled at his own neat letters. The threshold log started as a joke on a slow day. He drew a rectangle on a notebook and wrote, door. Contractors, delivery guys, folks who cross this line. Jot it. You'll thank yourself, if not now, then someday. He wiped his hands on a red rag, left a brown print. Paper is boring till it saves you. Later, when the sun dropped and the workshop cooled, he put the old brass key in my palm. Keys are promises, he said. This one says you can always get back in. He closed my fingers around it, the metal heavy and warm from his hand. 2 voicemails live on my phone. I don't play them often. In the workshop, in my head I could hear both. Hey, kiddo, it's me. The first one goes Dad's voice, low cheerful. If it rains, Saturday, check the ceiling stain by the chimney. If it grows, we'll reseal. Oh, change the furnace filter. Marked the size on the box. Proud of you. Call me. The second is shorter. Insurance bill paid. Don't worry. Doctor says cut back on smokes. A pause, a dry laugh. I know. And, hey, keep copies of anything important. If someone gives you grief, write it down. Love you. Back in the living room, Mum set the ceramic bowl in a different place again, testing me. I took it and put it back where it belonged. Her mouth pressed thin. My sister came skipping from the hall with her phone up like a crown. The guest room is so bright, she sang. Babe, we'll love it. I stood by the mantel and felt the key's weight even when I wasn't holding it. Measure twice, cut once. Write it down, keep copies. No, I said again, steady. This isn't a tour and nothing moves unless I say so. Mum's chin lifted. The fan in the hallway hummed like a quiet saw. I reached for the shoe cabinet, slid the notebook open and logged the moment. Date, time, names, one feeling. Then I looked at Mum. Why are you really here to talk like adults? Mum said, and to fix a mistake. What mistake? I asked. The house, she said. It should have gone to me. Or to your sister. Not. She waved a hand at the room at me at the air. My throat stayed calm. Then, let's talk like adults, I said. Let's talk about the will. The smell of fresh paint slid away. I was back at the lawyer's office months ago, 2 chairs and a box of tissues, the blinds half closed. My partner held my hand under the table. Mum and my sister joined on video cameras, off at first, then on. My sister's face was tight from crying. Mum's face was not. Mr. Carter, my dad's lawyer, cleared his throat. Your father knew he might not have much time, he said. He left a message. He clicked play. The screen showed Dad in his workshop, same radio in the back, same pegboard of tools. He wore the blue flannel with the torn sleeve and smiled straight into the lens. Hey, kiddo, he said. If you're watching this, I didn't get to say things the slow way. He blew out a breath. So, the house goes to you? You put in the years with me. You know how to take care of it. You know why it matters. He tapped the bench with his knuckles. Your sister gets the car, yes, that car, and a cash gift to help her start better. She will need to stand up on her own 2 feet, and I want her to have a steering wheel while she learns. Your mother gets a small amount, and the pieces she's been asking about for years. We've been divorced a long time. That's its own story. He looked down, as if hunting for a lighter he'd quit. This isn't about who I loved more. It's about who can keep the lights on and the roof dry and the papers straight. I've watched you measure twice and cut once. I trust you to keep a key where it belongs. He lifted a hand like he was going to touch the camera, then put it down. Be kind when you can. Be firm when you have to. Don't let anyone auction off home. I love you." The video ended with a hum from the fan. Mr. Carter folded his hands. "The deed will be recorded in your name," he said to me. "The business shares too. The car title for your sister is here. The cash amounts are here." He slid envelopes across the table like small white boats. On the screen, my sister sniffed. "Thank you," she said in a small voice. Mum leaned toward her camera and said, "This is premature. I was his wife, ex-wife," Mr. Carter said, "even but not unkind. Divorced 10 years. In the office, I nodded because nodding was easier than crying. My partner squeezed my hand twice here. Back in my living room, the floor was warm where the sun fell. Mum had moved from the mantel to the bookshelf, scanning spines the way she'd scanned the lawyer's face. "The will is clear, Mum," I said. "The deed is recorded." I pulled the top drawer of the console and took out a folder, certified copies dates the stamp. She didn't look at the papers. "A mother speaks for her family," she said. "I'm speaking." "In my house," I said, still even. "You speak after you ask." My sister drifted back into the room. Cheek's pink phone still up. "Babe says the guest room is perfect for a crib," she said, beaming. "We can bring it Friday." "There is no crib coming here," I said. Mum's smile went thin again. "You're being dramatic," she said. "You've always been dramatic." I slid the folder back, pressed the corner flush. "Dad wasn't dramatic," I said. "He was specific." Mum lifted her chin the way she used to when I was 12, and she wanted the last word by force. She took one step toward me, then another, as if the floor belonged to her breath. From the hall, the bathroom fan wound down. The house was very quiet. The brass key caught a stripe of light and flashed once. "Here's what's going to happen," Mum said. I met her eyes and waited. She lifted her chin and said, "Here's what's going to happen." Then she snapped her fingers twice like a metronome and said, "Water." I didn't move. She looked past me at the kitchen, as if I were a wall. "You're going to do your big sister duty," she went on, slow and sure. "Your sister is pregnant. She needs this house more than you do. You make good money. You can buy another place. Or you can keep one room and cover all the bills until you move out." In the hallway, my sister's voice rose like a bell. "Mommy, the sun in the guest room is amazing." She pointed her phone at the ceiling, then at me, then back to the closet, like she was shooting a listing. I kept my feet where they were. "No," I said. Mum smiled the way people smile at a child who's wrong. "You don't say no to me," she said. "I'm your mother. I am the one in charge here. I brought you into this world." She took a step closer, breath sweet with mint eyes hard. "I am God. When I say jump, you ask how high. This house is rightfully mine, and your sister will live here." The words rolled over the rug and tried to stick to everything. I felt the edge of the console against my hip and the weight of Dad's key on the wall behind me like a small star. "The will says otherwise," I said. "The deed says otherwise. This is my home." She laughed, a short, dry sound. "Consider this your formal notice," she said. 2 weeks. Pack your things. We will transfer the deed like civilized people." She reached for the ceramic bowl again, as if moving it would prove a point. I took it from her and set it back in its place, and did not take my hand off it until she let go. Her smile vanished. "You're being dramatic," she said. "You've always been dramatic." "No," I said. "I'm being specific." My sister drifted in beside her, wide-eyed, bouncing a little on the balls of her feet. "Babe says we can get the crib delivered Friday," she chirped. "We just need to clear the hallway." Mum nodded already, making a map in the air with her finger tracing a path from the door to the guest room, like she was staging a parade. She snapped again for water. I stood still. The morning light pulled a bright line across the floor, a chalk mark between us. Ask before you take, I said. Ask before you enter. Ask before you touch. That starts now. Mum's face sharpened. Don't lecture me in my own, she caught herself, then pushed the word world into daughters, and it came out as a hiss. She moved fast, then the way storms do when they finally break. Her hand came up and cracked across my cheek, sharp and hot. The room went quiet, enough to hear the fan in the bathroom spool back up. My body did what it knows. I lifted my forearm, stepped back, let her wrist slide off my sleeve and put space between us. I didn't hit back. I didn't even reach for her. I felt the sting tasted metal and breathed. Do that again, and you leave now, I said, my voice low, steady. My sister gasped, like she was watching a show. Mummy, she started, then giggled, then stopped, not sure which direction the scene was going to go. Mum blinked, surprised I hadn't crumpled, surprised the room hadn't bent to her. She pointed at the hallway. Go finish your video, she told my sister. This is adult talk. Then, to me, you will give your sister this house. You will not embarrass this family. If you call anyone, I will tell them you attacked me in a fit. I will say you tried to hurt a pregnant woman. Who do you think they'll believe I let the sentence hang there between us? The brass key caught a thin bar of sun and flashed again a small lighthouse. I could feel the shape of my phone in the kitchen, where I'd set it screen down by the coffee. I could feel my partner's quiet shape in the doorway, now his eyes on me, his hand near the counter. Leave, I said, or we end this a different way. Mum's mouth curled. She stepped in, testing the new line, and found it held. For a beat, we just breathed the same square of air, 2 metronomes out of sync. Last chance, she said. Jump. No, I said, and the word was a key turning. The room steadied. Mum waited for me to wobble. I didn't. I kept my hands open at my sides, felt the heat fade from my cheek, and let the silence stretch until it belonged to me. My partner stood by the counter, one palm on the edge, eyes on me. I met his look and shook my head once. Not 911, not yet. He understood. His thumb slid his phone awake. The camera winked. I stepped to the shoe cabinet, pulled the threshold log, and set it on top where everyone could see it. I'm starting a paper trail, I said, level. Date, who crossed my door, what was said, what was touched. I spoke like a clerk reading a receipt. Mum rolled her eyes, but she tracked my hand as I wrote. This morning, Mum and sister demand for house. Threat to lie to authorities. I took a photo of the open page, another of Mum, inside the line of the door of my sister, filming the hallway of the ceramic bowl Mum had moved twice. This is ridiculous, Mum said, but her voice had a tight edge now, like fabric pulled too far. My partner set his phone against the sugar jar camera, still on lens, aimed low across the counter. He mouthed, "Lawyer." I nodded. He opened the group thread with Mr. Carter and typed urgent at house, now trespass and demands recording advise. I unlocked my own phone and brought up the keypad. 911 blinked at me like 2 small exits. I didn't press call. Instead, I hit voice memos and set it on the mantel beside Dad's bowl screen. Dark. You should leave. I told Mum, calm as rain. If you stay, everything you say and do will be documented, and both of you will be asked to leave again on camera. Next step is police and a restraining order. The words felt like a simple ladder, one rung then the next. She tested the air with a laugh. Big words, she said. Little girl. My cheek still stung. I let the sting be a lighthouse that kept me off the rocks. Measure twice. I said mostly to myself and checked that the front door was still open, that the line of light still cut the floor. I took 2 slow photos of that line, then one of Mum inside it. My sister peered around the corner, grinning in a way that didn't reach her eyes. Babe says you're overreacting, she sang. Babe says family should share. Babe can share his lease, I said without looking at her. The sugar jar buzzed a reply from Mr. Carter. My partner read it, then met my eyes. He says record and ask them to leave once more. If they refuse or threaten, call 911. He'll stay on standby. He wants copies of everything. I nodded and felt the click of the plan settle in. Last, ask, I said to Mum, voice even. Please leave my home. She held my stare. 2 beats, 3. Her jaw worked, then set. No, she said like a dare. I slid my thumb over the red call button, then stopped a breath short. You have 10 seconds to step outside, I said. If you want to talk, we'll talk on the porch with the door closed behind you. I watched the idea land. The porch meant neighbours. The porch meant witnesses. The porch meant the line would be mine again. Mum glanced at the open door, then back at his phone, then at the log. Fine, she said, sweet as a knife. Let's talk. She moved toward the threshold. My sister followed, still filming, still humming. I lifted the voice memo, took the log in one hand, and touched Dad's brass key with the other. The metal was cool, steady. We stepped toward the door together. The porch was bright and square, like a stage, the boards warm under my bare feet, the rail casting neat stripes across the steps. I eased the door shut behind us until the latch clicked, kept the threshold log in my left hand, and the phone with the voice memo in my right, and looked at Mum as if we were just 2 people in daylight. Across the street, Mrs. Patel watered her roses and pretended not to look, which meant she was looking. My partner slid his phone from the sugar jar to his palm and said in a calm voice that carried, I've been recording since you walked in, and the sentence changed the air. It was small and simple and final, like turning a key. Mum's mouth twitched a quick static like a radio losing signal. She tried a smile that didn't land and said, Good, more proof of how rude you're being, but her eyes kept tracking the lens. I held up the log so it filled her view date, time, names the line about threats, and took one photo of Mom and one of my sister on the porch phone, still up belly under the pink hoodie. We're done inside, I said. If you want to talk here. Mom leaned toward me, her voice low and syrupy. If you call the police, I'll say you hit me. I'll say you shoved a pregnant woman. Who do you think they'll believe? Behind her, my partner raised his phone 2 inches higher so the sun lit Mum's face and the porch post, where a little nail stuck out the kind of frame a judge likes. We have you on video striking me first, I said steady. We have you moving my property and refusing to leave. We have you threatening a false report on camera. Don't do that to yourself. Mrs. Patel's hose paused. The water made a silver rope before it fell. Mom heard the pause and cut her eyes sideways and back, doing the math. My phone buzzed with Mr. Carter's text. Send copies of the video and the photos now. I opened photos, selected the clips and the shots of the log and the wide porch angle and shared them to the thread. Seconds later, he replied, Received, keep recording. Ask them to leave again. My sister scooted to the top step and lowered herself onto it like a kid, then grabbed the rail with both hands and rocked, the wood creaking. Mommy, you promised, she said, not to me. Her voice had no edges, just a wet centre. It rolled over the porch and down the walk. Mom flinched at the word promised just a blink, then faced me with a performance smile. We came to check if the house is safe, she said louder. We're being responsible. No, I said. You came to demand my house. I said no. Now you're trespassing. Please leave my property. I kept my tone like weather. No thunder, just the fact of rain. She held still. The porch clock ticked behind the glass of the front light. My partner, without looking away, tapped his screen, and a soft chime told us the recording saved. He started a new one. Mum's shoulders dropped a half-inch, then lifted again as she reached for pride. You're cruel, she said. You'll regret this when the baby is born and needs a room. The baby will need honest adults, I said, not stolen rooms. My sister's grip on the rail tightened. She looked up at Mum with a panic I recognised from other, smaller moments. It had always worked before. Mum stepped toward the steps and tried to lift her by the elbow. My sister didn't rise. You promised, she said again, smaller. Mum gave the neighbourhood a smile and the camera a different one, then leaned down and hissed, "Get up." The word wasn't for us, but we all heard it. I lifted the phone so the mic caught it clean. Mum straightened, smoothed her shirt and turned to me with the last of her steel. "Take it to court," then she said, like she wanted the last line. "Okay," I said. "Everything from today is time-stamped." I glanced at the door. The brass key glinted inside on its hook and I felt it, the way you feel a ring even when you aren't wearing it. "Leave now?" I said final. Next step is 911 and then the restraining order. The words stacked like bricks. Mrs. Patel's hose started again. A car rolled by slow. My partner's phone chimed, "Mr. Carter, again, if they leave, do not follow. If they post lies, send screenshots. We will issue a signed demand today." Mum read my face reading the message and seemed to understand there was a road she didn't want to take. She took my sister's wrist and tugged. My sister stayed glued a beat longer, then let go of the rail and stood, her eyes red, but her mouth still the way kids look when the game ends and they didn't win. "You're heartless," Mum said, but she had already turned toward the steps. "There's a special place for people like you." "For liars, I asked, not unkind." She snapped me a look like a thrown match and stepped down. Halfway to the car, she turned back and lifted her hand like she might flip me off, then saw the camera and made a fist instead. My sister took one last slow pan of the porch, as if she could keep it on her screen, then followed. They got in. The engine coughed, the car pulled away. I didn't wave. I held the log and the phone and watched until the taillights vanished at the corner. Only then did I let the door open and bring the threshold back to my side. Inside, the house felt the size it should be. My cheek was warm, not hot. My partner set his phone down and exhaled. The recording stacked like quiet bricks between us. I texted Mr. Carter. They left, sending full files. He replied, "Good, proud of you." I took one more photo of the open doorway, the stripe of light on the floor, and the hook where Dad's key waited. Evidence had turned the room back into my room. The power had gone with the car. I closed the door. And the house went quiet. Then my phone began to buzz like a trapped bee. A cousin wrote what happened. A friend sent a screenshot of my mum's post under a photo of my porch, saying I stole my sister's inheritance, that I bought off a lawyer, that I attacked my own mother, while my pregnant sister begged me to be kind. My name was not printed, but the clues were bright. Comments stacked fast. "She is pregnant. Let her have the house. Family first. Be a good sister." My partner was already moving earbuds in laptop open. He made a clean folder called House Day 1 and another inside it for screens. He opened the post, saved the words and the time, and the first pages of comments, then went on saving more. "They blocked you," he said, but they did not block me. An invite to a family chat lit up the screen, and then a dozen bubbles raced to speak. "Give her the home for the baby. What kind of daughter refuses a crib? Your father would want peace." Then Aunt Lena slow and steady. "A will is a will. Be careful with public claims." I wrote a short line in the threshold log and took a picture of it. Entry, demand, threat, strike, porch, promise exposed, exit, first post, no minutes and seconds, just the truth in order. My partner slid me a legal pad. "Talk, and I will type," he said. We kept the list plain and clipped, and beside each point, he dropped a still or a clip with simple names. The lawyer texted in our group thread, "Keep collecting. Do not reply. Send copies. I scrolled and saw that Mom had also posted in the neighbourhood group a softer mask about safety and kindness and trying to resolve things, and my sister had put up a short story from my hallway with the words, "Babe, it is perfect. He saved both before they slipped away." A cousin wrote in all caps to show respect to a mother. Aunt Lena answered, "Respect includes truth." I sent a short thank you to Lena and left the rest alone. A voicemail from Mum landed next, her voice sweet and sharp. "Honey, you are making a scene online. Take responsibility before this gets ugly." I saved it in a folder named Evidence and noted it in the log. My partner pulled a small whiteboard from the closet and drew 2 columns, offline and online. Under offline, he wrote, "Witness, Mrs. Patel, watering Rose's porch, recording threshold log photos of the moved bowl and my cheek." Under online, he wrote the main post, the neighbourhood thread, the hallway story, and the family chat. "We will export this to a clean packet," he said. "Then we will send it to Carter." My phone buzzed again. A second cousin I barely know wrote, "Just give her the house for a year." A friend wrote, "Are you okay? Do you want me to comment?" I told the friend no. "Comments please, just save screenshots." My partner sent the same note to 3 close friends. More images came in, Mum replying to strangers with soft words that bent facts. My sister adding a crying face to a post about homeless mothers. Heat rose in my throat and then fell like earlier. I opened voice memos and recorded one line to myself. "Do not answer online. Finish the packet. Breathe." The house smelled like coffee again. The brass key on the hook did not shine. It simply waited like a fact. I took a picture of the key and saved it in a folder named Symbols. Not for court, for me. In the family chat, someone said, "This is between us, not lawyers." Aunt Lena answered that it became lawyers when lies went public. Mr. Carter pinged to send the packet by noon and said he would draft a letter. I typed back that we would send it soon. My partner looked up and gave me a small nod. The storm was still loud, but now it had names and files. Dad's rules felt like a boat. I held the side and let the waves slap. I did not answer anyone. I did not explain. I saved, I named, I sent. By midday, our packet was clean. He compressed the clips, named each file in plain English, and pushed a copy to the cloud and an external drive. I added the threshold log photo, the porch steals the voicemail, and a short note that said what happened in order. No times, no speeches, just facts. We sent everything to Mr. Carter. He called a few minutes later on speaker. "Good work," he said. "I am issuing a demand letter today. It will go by email and by courier with a signature required. It says, take the post down, publish a correction and stop contacting you. It also warns that any lies or trespass from here on could mean a lawsuit. Keep your evidence safe. Do not engage." He asked for one more thing, a preservation note for their social media. He would handle it. I looked at the door. The key hung where it always hung. The house smelled like coffee and dust. I said thank you, and he said, "You are doing this right." An hour later, the courier confirmed delivery at Mum's office. Not a smiley confirmation. Just the word signed. A text from Mum hits right after. "Call me, now." I did not. Then, another. "You are ruining our family name." Then a third with a photo of my sister's belly and a line meant to hurt me. I saved them in evidence and wrote one dry line in the log. I left the rest alone. Mr. Carter pinged again. "If this escalates, we can seek a restraining order." "There is a short form," he said. "We will keep it simple." He emailed the form. He told us what the judge would need to see a pattern, a boundary, and a fresh violation or a clear threat. You have the pattern and the boundary. If they come back or keep lying after the letter, we file. My hands felt steady and cold at the same time. I told him we would keep documenting. He told me to breathe and to go get some air if I could. That night, the post did not vanish. Some words were softened, some comments were locked, but the big lie stayed up. Mr. Carter said that was enough for the next step. The next morning we went to the courthouse. Fluorescent lights sanitizer metal chairs that scraped the floor. He met us by the elevators with a slim folder. "Keep your voice simple," he said. "Do not retell everything. Give the judge the spine." He pointed to the packet he had printed the porch photo. The bowl moved the red mark on my cheek, the screenshot where Mum threatened a false report, the letter receipt, and the 3 texts after delivery. He slid in a short statement from Mrs. Patel that said she saw my mother refuse to leave. He had her number on the cover sheet as a witness. "Chain of custody," he said, tapping the corner. "Originals on the drive. Printed copies here." In the small hearing room, a clerk asked us to sit. I could feel sweat gather in my palms and then dry. The judge looked over thin readers and asked for names. When she asked me to describe who I was seeking protection from, the word mother came up my throat and stopped. I said the respondent. It sounded strange and right at the same time. I told the spine in 3 sentences. She came in without permission. She struck me and threatened to lie to the police. After our lawyer's letter, she kept posting lies and sent texts that pressed for contact. Mr. Carter handed up the packet. The judge flipped pages, pausing at the porch photo and the text thread. She asked if the child's father lived with my sister. I said yes, at my mother's house. She asked if I feared they would return. I said yes. The judge nodded. "This is a temporary order," she said. "No contact, direct or indirect. No posts about you. No entry onto your property. If they need to communicate, it goes through counsel. We will set a longer hearing later. Do you understand?" I said yes. My voice was quiet but clear. The clerk stamped the paper. The stamp thumped like a soft gavel. Outside, the sun felt bright and flat. He put a copy of the order in a plastic sleeve and tucked it into the front of our folder. "We will scan it when we get home," he said. He also suggested a small step: change the front door code, add a second camera facing the porch, let Mrs. Patel know there is an order in place so she will not worry if she sees a patrol car. None of it felt dramatic. It felt like adding locks to a toolbox. Back home, we sent scanned copies to Mr. Carter and to ourselves. He handled service of the order. We did small chores the rest of the day because small chores make a house feel like itself. I wiped the mantel and touched the ceramic bowl and left it where it belongs. He checked the porch camera and labelled the new clips. When my phone buzzed, I let it buzz. When it stopped, I wrote one neat line in the log. Order in place. Boundaries set. Then I hung the pen back on its string and looked at the door. The key did not shine. It just held its shape, and that steady shape pulled me back to the first time I learned to hold a line. I was 18, living half with Dad and half with Mom. I worked a small cafe job and kept my tips in a jar behind my books. One day, the jar was gone. By dinner, there was a story in the family chat that I had stolen cash from Mom to buy a dress I never owned. She called my aunts. She called a neighbour. She even called my boss and said I was dishonest. My cheeks burned so hot, I thought they would leave marks. I had no proof, no receipt, no photos, nothing but the empty space where the jar should be. Dad asked softly, "What do you have in writing?" I said nothing, and the word felt like a hole. A week later, I learned the jar had been used to cover a late bill. Then, the story changed, and I was still the problem because I had made a fuss. "You embarrass me," Mum said. Dad looked at me and said, "Write it down." From then on, I kept small notes on scraps. I took pictures of shelves and rooms before holidays. I learned that a dated photo is a quiet witness. People can turn a story faster than you can blink. Paper is boring until it saves you. Years passed and the habit stuck. When I buy a thing, I keep the receipt. When I say a hard sentence, I write a softer copy for myself in a notebook. When I feel doubt, I take a picture not to post, but to remember. After the court order, I booked one therapy session. Part of me wanted to skip it. I was tired and I thought the paper should be enough. But Dad would have told me to learn the tool, and this felt like a tool. The room was small and kind, a couch, a plant, a box of tissues. She asked what happened. I gave her the spine. She asked what I felt. I said, a heavy quiet behind my ribs. That she said is what a boundary can feel like, not a wall, a weight you can carry. She asked me to say no out loud without a reason. I said no. She asked me to say it again, slower, as if handing someone a cup. I said no, and the room did not tilt. What does guilt say? She asked. Guilt says I should make Mum comfortable. What does truth say? Truth says comfort is not the same as safety. Then we practiced one simple line. Ask before you enter. Ask before you touch. Ask before you speak for me. Say it once and stop, she said. I said it once and stopped. He waited in the lobby and squeezed my fingers when I came out. We walked to the car without talking. The sky was flat, the kind that makes the world look drawn. I felt the order in my bag like a solid book. I felt the key at home like a small star holding still. We picked up soup on the way back. At the table, he sorted the mail and I wrote one line in the threshold log. Not about them, about me. Today, I kept my story short and true. The pen scratched the page. The house breathed around us. I let the quiet belong to me again. The quiet held, and then a cousin sent a bright flyer from Mum's house. Pink balloons, frosted cupcakes, the words, baby shower, and I felt the order in my bag like a hand on my shoulder, saying stay clear so I did not go. I watered the fern and folded laundry, while the party bloomed online in small squares. My partner sat with his laptop and saved what floated by a group photo in the yard. A reel of gifts opened, a shot of my old street from the curb with the caption family home. I felt the tug and let it pass. A friend of a friend posted a longer clip from the living room, my sister under a banner hand on her belly laughing as she said, "The transfer is already handled by a lawyer," and the room clapped like it was church. My partner paused the clip and looked at me. I nodded. He saved it and tagged it as the lie said out loud. The camera panned toward the kitchen. Mum stood behind the island, moving trays like a director, pointing once toward the hallway, as if the house itself were a stage note, the hall the light. Later, a cousin shared a photo of the boyfriend by the patio door paper plate in hand. He was not smiling. He looked like someone doing math in his head. He moved chairs, cut cake-filled trash bags, kept one eye on the sky. A cousin typed, "He is a good man," and I could see the truth in that line. After the party, a new text came to me from a number I did not know. He wrote, "This is the father. I am sorry for the noise. I truly thought there was a plan. Your mum said the papers were moving and I was scared. I have been begging for more hours and a second job. I should not have pushed. I will tell her to stop. We will find a room. Please do not post." I read it twice, forwarded it to Mr. Carter, and did not reply. The order says no contact. The lawyer answered quickly, "Thank you. Keep the message." The clip from the party helps. It shows a clear, false claim about a transfer and who claimed to handle it. My chest tightened. For the boyfriend, fear is loud and makes decent people say rough things, but the house is not a noise to turn down. The house is the line we hold. A neighbour sent a note through the app. "Congratulations to the new family. How lovely the young couple would be moving into my place." I answered calmly, "Thank you. The rumour is not true. Please direct any questions to counsel." Then I logged one dry line, "The rumour has stepped out of the family," and into the street. In the evening, I stitched 2 inches of flannel on the baby blanket, then put it away. The gift would be for the child, not for the story, not for the party. My partner brewed tea and showed me a quiet. Still he had pulled from a crowd video, the boyfriend bent over a slip of paper, a hand on his shoulder, not my sister's, someone else's. A small kindness in the frame. It made the scene more human, which did not make it less wrong. By morning, the party posts were still up and the transfer line had new hearts and little prayers. Mr. Carter said we had enough for a second letter to the same addresses demanding correction of that claim, and he sent it. I stood at the door and touched the brass key and heard Dad's voice be kind, when you confirm when you have to. I wrote one neat sentence in the threshold log, not about trespass this time, but about pressure moving through rooms. I do not stand in, then hung the pen back and let the house breathe around me again, and then a suitcase rattled up the walk. A young couple stood on the porch, smiling the way people smile when they arrive at a vacation, and the man held up his phone to show a listing with my porch. In the main photo, the same angle, the same bowl in the window. "Hi, we are here for check-in," he said. I felt the key on its hook without touching it, and said gently that there was no rental here, and that the host they had booked was my mother at a different address. Their faces fell, not angry, just tired. My partner stepped beside me and asked if we could take a quick photo of the listing screen for our records. The woman nodded small and kind, and he took one clear picture and then helped them search the right place on a map. Mrs. Patel called from across the street to ask if they needed water. It was a soft moment in a hard week. When they left, pulling the suitcase back down the walk, I wrote one line in the threshold log, not about trouble, but about traffic that should not be here. Then, the next day, it happened again. A rideshare idled in front of our driveway, and a driver knocked to ask for the code. The same photo, the same misleading caption. My partner exhaled once long and went to his desk. He drafted a plain email to the platform, to the address for trust and safety, with our porch photo, the signed demand letter, the order, and a short note that the host was using images of a property she did not own or control. He also sent a simple notice to my mother through the platform inbox to stop using our images and to correct the address. No extra words, just the request and the proof. I sent a separate note to the neighbourhood page to clear the air, one paragraph that said there was no rental at my address, and asked folks to let guests know if they were lost. Replies came in from neighbours who had seen strangers circle the block. At night, headlights sweeping the windows. One neighbour said his kids were nervous about people trying door handles. I felt the heat rise and fall, and then picked up the small screwdriver and tightened the loose hook that holds Dad's key. The world is loud. Dad would say, "Fix the thing in front of you." Later, an email from the platform arrived. A calm message that they had removed the images and reminded the host of photo guidelines. I read it twice, let my shoulders drop and told my partner thank you. He said we should still expect spillover, and he was right. 2 more cars slowed to a crawl. That weekend, drivers talking to their phones, looking at the porch and the door like a map. Each time I opened the door and stood on the threshold and kept my voice kind, and each time I made a neat note in the log. The notes were not for drama. They were for the pattern, the way a seamstress marks cloth before a cut. That night, the neighbour on the corner left a small card in our mailbox that said, "Thank you for clearing this up. We have had extra parking in front of our hydrant. Please let us know if you need witnesses." I put the card in the folder with the other small facts and felt the house settle. The bowl on the mantel stayed where it belonged. The porch camera blinked a little green light and then went still. I touched the key and felt nothing mystical, just metal and weight, a promise that the door would answer to me. The world outside could make noise and glow, but inside the line held. I wrote one last sentence in the log and put the pen away. The pen went away, and I felt the house settle, so I pulled the attic cord and climbed the narrow ladder into warm dust and dry wood. Light fell in the thin bars through the vent, and the air smelled like old paper and pine. I moved a box labelled house and another labelled receipts and found a flat tin with Dad's handwriting keep. Inside was a stack of folders with neat tabs, roof permits wiring furnace windows, each with invoices and photos each stamped or signed his initials in the corner. The roof file held a copy of the permit and a photo of the chimney with a date written on the back. The wiring file had a city inspection slip with a green check. Near the bottom, I found a folder marked Renovation, and there tucked into a plastic sleeve was a contractor agreement with 2 names on the line, his and mine. From the summer, we rebuilt the front room together. I ran my thumb over the ink and felt something rise in my throat that was not quite tears. Under the folders lay a blue flannel shirt, thin at the elbows, the same one from the video. I pressed it to my face and breathed sawdust and soap and a faint trace of smoke that had outlived the habit. Beneath the shirt was an envelope addressed in his steady hand for the keeper of this door. I sat on the boards and opened it. The letter was short and plain, the way he spoke when work mattered. If you are reading this, you are the person who keeps the lights on. Do not let anyone sell what is not theirs. A house is not only wood, it is memory and promise. Be kind when you can and firm when you must. I folded the page and put it back, then took out my phone and made calm pictures, the tin, the tabs, the permits, the sleeve with our 2 names, the letter front and back. I carried the box down the ladder and set it on the table. My partner laid out fresh sleeves, and we slid each document in one by one until the pile looked less like a heap and more like a record. He scanned the set, named the files without drama, and sent a copy to Mr. Carter with a short note. Additional proof of ownership and improvements. I kept the flannel shirt out and smoothed it across my lap. A small square had already been cut for the baby blanket, and the missing piece made a neat window where my hands rested. I did not feel grand or brave, just steady like a level finding its line. The brass key hung on its hook and caught a dull thread of light. For a second, I imagined Dad at the workbench tapping a pencil on a plan saying measure twice, then smiling because the measure was done. I put the shirt in the sewing basket, returned the letter to its sleeve, and filed the box on the lowest shelf where I could reach it without a ladder. Before closing the attic, I took one last photo of the joists and the empty square where the tin had been a quiet before and after for myself. Downstairs, the house felt clear, like a room after you pull the drop cloths. I wrote one neat sentence in the threshold log paper in place, memory in hand, and let the page close with its small certain sound. Mr. Carter suggested a short, neutral meeting on a cafe patio within the order and with no direct speech, so we sat at one table, and Mom and my sister sat at another with their lawyer, and the lawyers moved between us like calm ferries. My partner kept a quiet hand on the folder, while Mr. Carter set out the terms on a single page: public correction and apology. A clear retraction of the transfer claim. No posts about me, no contact except through counsel, no use of my address or photos, no entry onto my property, and a clause that any breach would trigger suit and a police report. He added one humane line I had asked for: that when the baby is born, I will mail a blanket. I am sowing a kindness that changes nothing about the deed. Across the space, Mum's mouth tightened, and her lawyer read each line and said they would consider a correction, but not an admission, while Mr. Carter said words matter, and showed the packet again: the porch, the bowl moved, the slap, the false report threat, the order, the platform notice about photos. My sister's eyes kept dropping to the page and then to her lap. She looked tired in a way that gets past makeup. Her lawyer passed a short note to Mr. Carter from the child's father, sent through counsel, saying they would find their own place and asking that we keep them out of posts. I felt a small knot ease that did not change the boundary. Mom asked for the deed to be discussed later, and Mr. Carter said the deed is not a discussion. Mum called the terms hostile, and he answered steady that they were simple and necessary. My sister asked if she could have copies of a few childhood photos for the baby book, and I said yes through council, digital only. Mum tried to fold that small yes into a bigger ask for a few weeks in the guest room, and Mr. Carter shook his head and tapped the line that said, "No entry." He also slid across a one-page list of rental resources and clinics that help new parents with cribs and formula. Not as bait, just as proof that refusal is not cruelty. Their lawyer conferred, then said they could agree to take down posts, stop using my address and photos, and route any needed communication through council. The apology language would be drafted by them and reviewed by us. Mr. Carter nodded and wrote the outline in simple words, then added one more clause, no mentioning the case in coded ways online. Mum's lawyer hesitated and then wrote yes. Mum stared at the street as if she could will a different traffic to pass. My sister signed her initials on the outline and pushed the pen back with 2 fingers like it was heavy. We did not speak across the space, but she gave me a small look that said, "I understand the door now," and I looked back once and then down so we would not break the rule. The lawyers gathered the pages and Mr. Carter said he would turn the outline into a short agreement and send it for signatures. As we stood, Mum said into the air that I was dramatic and no one answered. On the walk to the car, my partner slipped the folder into his bag and said we held the line without raising our voice. At home, I touched the brass key, wrote one clean sentence in the threshold log, terms offered, lines held, and let the house breathe around me like steady weather. At home, the weather inside felt steady, so I washed the door frame and rolled on fresh paint. Slow strokes, bright and clean. While it dried, I set Dad's brass key in my palm and rubbed the tarnish with a soft cloth until it was only metal and memories. A small parcel arrived, a plain box, no note, and inside were the flannel squares I had been stitching into a baby blanket, the blue from Dad's shirt pieced with pale cotton. I laid it across the table and smoothed the seams, then folded it and tied it with twine. When the child is born, I will mail it to the new address through council kindness, without surrender. My partner brewed tea and we sat by the open window, the house breathing like a calm chest, the street moving on. Later, I hung the key back on its hook and opened the threshold log for one last line. Not about trespass or noise or proof, but about the thing I could name without shaking. Today, I kept the house and kept myself. I closed the notebook and listened to the quiet click. It made a small door shutting the right way, and for a long minute, I let the quiet be mine. If this becomes a story someone else needs, one day, let it be this simple. You can be kind and still keep the door. You can be firm and still love the people outside it. And when someone snaps their fingers, you can answer with a steady no. Drop your stories in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it.